We on tour, and we're doing it better than anybody else alive. It's so hard for me to sit back here in this studio looking at a guy out here hollering my name when last year I spent more money on spilt liquor in bars from one side of this world to the other than you made. You're talking to the Rolex wearing, it's live and in color, diamond ring wearing, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun, and I'm having a hard time holding these alligators down. There's only one.
And welcome everyone, this is Taco Movie Talks. I'm joined here by Ethan, aka Film Junkie. His channel will be in the title and in the pinned comment down below. Ethan, how you doing today, bud?
I am doing swell. How are you doing?
I am doing pretty good. I recently saw that you watched the Evil Dead Rises movie in theaters as we speak. And you saw that, I think, about a week ago, and I think I saw it about a week ago as well.
Yes.
Before we dive too deep into it, just positive or negative reaction to that movie, and follow that up, I guess, with when you got introduced to the franchise.
Well, I liked the movie quite a bit. I actually enjoyed myself when I was like, there's two other people in the theater, so I was just kind of enjoying myself in this very big auditorium with largely just myself. And I had a good time with it. I first got introduced to... I really first got introduced by just like internet talk about it. And then my friend was also talking about like how the Evil Dead movies are really awesome, and that his sibling was actually named after the main character, Ash.
Really?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, and so I watched all of them, and I watched the first three, and then I watched this new one, and you told me, hey, let's do a ranking video for it, and I was like, cool. And as we recorded this, I watched the 2013 movie right before we started recording.
So it's fresh in your mind for sure.
Very fresh. Most of these vary in freshness in my mind. Like the two new ones are pretty fresh. The Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness are relatively fresh, but the first one is a little fuzzy for me.
I'm almost in the same exact boat as you. I mean, saw Evil Dead Rises about a week ago, and prior to watching that, I think the night before, maybe a couple nights before, watched the reboot 2013 Evil Dead. Evil Dead Rises, I watched that, the most recent, actually. That was the last one that I watched from this franchise. And then the first two, those go back a little bit, so I'll be a little bit fuzzy on that. So I'm mostly referring with the reviews that I made, pretty fresh from watching those. But I think you stated, so you watched it almost pretty much in order, right? So you watched the 1981 as your first movie?
Yes. I watched the first one because it was on a... what compelled me to watch the first one was I have this bucket list poster, this movie bucket list poster that I had, and obviously I completed it, but Evil Dead 1 was on there, and I was like, okay, I'll watch it then. And yeah, and then I went with the second one, then Army of Darkness, then I skipped to Evil Dead Rise, and then I just watched Evil Dead 2013.
The first of this franchise I watched was the 2013 one, and I originally watched that like pretty much once that movie went to video on demand. I think my dad and I rented that and watched it, like sometime in 2013, maybe 2014. And so I had nothing to like compare it to, but there's definitely like I think a tonal change from the reboots and the originals. And it's clearly super influenced, especially Evil Dead, where like the house itself looks very much the same. The Deadites, the whole kind of plot points behind it. But I think there's a pretty noticeable tonal change, whereas the original Evil Dead 2, and then especially Army of Darkness feels a little bit more darkly comedic compared to these latest two.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think a lot of people, our preference will likely come down to your view of those tonal changes, if I had to guess, because I see
Yes.
a ton of people reviewing these on Letterboxd, and I think there's probably people. I think a lot of people are gonna love all of the films, but I think it's really preference if you have the original trilogy above the new ones, or vice versa.
Yeah. I think the Evil Dead franchise is possibly one of the most consistently solid horror franchises I've come across.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think at least the bottom of my list, the movies are still decent, and they've got decent ideas.
Yes, I completely agree. I don't have anything rated below a 3-star, and like the top of the list goes up to 4.5. So
Yeah.
I completely agree with you, and we were talking about this before we even started recording. Horror franchises can, they can really start to scrape the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
And it's because they have that huge dedicated fan base that's going to really just consume it, even if it's not a masterpiece, just to get some more lore and, that imagery, and or because it's nostalgia and they grew up with it, a lot of those factors. But even though this does, obviously it has that IP and it does give you more lore, and a lot of people are going to watch just because they want to find out more about this, I don't think anything is like a clear cash grab where there's no heart or soul or creativity put into it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Ethan, the way I kind of wanted to go about this is we'll start in chronological order. So the 1981, we'll kind of give brief thoughts on maybe our likes or dislikes, and obviously I'm going to be the same as you probably, or I will, just speaking for myself, I am going to be fuzzy on a couple of these. But maybe a brief review, if you have a rating that you gave it, we'll say that, and then where we would rank it on our list. Does that sound good with you?
Sounds good.
So, starting with Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 1981, this is kind of the story that kicks it all off, where the group of college students, including our protagonist Bruce Campbell, go to a cabin in the woods and find a mysterious book and a recording in the old wilderness's cabin, and from the readings unleashes a demonic force from the surrounding forest. That's the summary, and when I watched this, I had heard so many good things about it, and I felt like it was really bombastic, off the wall, and crazy, and I loved that aspect about it. And all of the Raimi kind of hallmarks are in this movie. So like the crazy cinematography, those tracking shots, it all felt super super unique, and it was, you know, blood fueled crazy adventure.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed it. Ethan, what were, oh, and I guess I'll say the rating now. I gave this
Hmm.
one a 4 out of 5 stars.
Hmm. Are we just like we're gonna give our rating and then we're gonna discuss more about it, or are we gonna just
Yeah,
quickly?
we'll do that. Then we'll have some cross discussion, and then we'll close it out with where it ranks.
Gotcha, gotcha. Um, the original Evil Dead is, when you look back at it, it's a incredibly impressive feat. Sam Raimi made this movie and released it at the age of only 20 years old.
Wow.
Which means and he might have shot it in like 1980, so he might be 19 when he shot the movie, which is insane. That one of the most iconic horror films ever made was made by a 19-year-old guy, and his brother was who did like some of the creatures, who played some of the creatures. He was 15 at the time.
Holy crap.
Um, yeah, so just a bunch of young people, a very very small budget, and they managed to pull off it. Like it is iconic. And the characters and the character of Ash is iconic.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that is due to Bruce Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
The original Evil Dead was a movie that perplexed me in how I was impressed. I was so simultaneously impressed and bored by it. I didn't really like it when I first watched it. I thought it was kind of dull and uninteresting because of the main characters
Mm-hmm.
were so dull and uninteresting. Aside from Ash, well, that's just because because Bruce Campbell makes that character work. But the character, I don't think, fully comes into his own until Raimi makes Evil Dead. But I think it was just like limited by it felt limiting in its budget at points, and I felt like that, and I just felt uninterested by. I just remember interested by it, and then the last like 15 minutes, I had no clue what was going on, and I guess I was just very confused by it. I gave this movie 3 out of 5, which is controversial. I know, controversial.
Can you repeat it? You cut out when you said what you gave it out of 5.
Oh, sorry, a 3 out of 5.
I gotcha. I gotcha. The first thing I'll say is that the characters being uninteresting aside from Ash, I do tend to agree with you on that.
Mhm.
He's clearly the most charismatic, and I would imagine with all the things that Raimi did well, I think that was something that he was still trying to. He needed more experience for. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
I would say, and I had the ages of both of the Raimi brothers, I had no idea about, but that impresses the hell out of me because the cinematography and the makeup are the two things that are, I think, and you would probably have a better eye for this than I, but you can tell they don't have the advantages of a big production, I guess, but are able to almost equally dazzle with what they were able to do despite not having the assets to be able to make it flawless. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And it sometimes comes across as like a slasher, almost just like really blunt, and it's not as like Evil Dead. I think probably the thing that makes Evil Dead most unique is its humor. It's comedy, and I feel like without that, the original just feels more dull than a lot of others. But I still think it's very impressive what Sam Raimi managed to do with this very small budget.
Yeah, and kind of, I feel like this was the movie that helped identify this tone that he was able to capture it in Evil Dead, and then have it in Evil Dead 2 that I really, outside of those two movies, I've never experienced, where there's hints of being bombastic and off the wall, and even like it starts to get close to like tongue in cheek, where it's like, as a viewer you can notice how outrageous this is. But what I appreciated the most about it is that it never completely took you out of like this macabre and horrific world. And that perfect blend, to me, I think, was something he was able to capture in this one. And because I think, you know, it made the entirety of the film entertaining, for me at least. And I don't know how, you know, you make a formula to be able to do that. I've never seen anything quite like it. You know, films can kind of, you know, switch back and forth from kind of comedy to more horror elements. But this, it felt like there was scenes that like actually completely blended them, where there was aspects of both going on at the same time, you know? That's why that's why I kind of lean more towards the original.
I definitely get that. That's honestly kind of how I felt about Evil Dead Rise.
Okay.
I feel like definitely I need to rewatch the original Evil Dead, because if I rewatch that movie, I'll probably like it a lot more than I did the first time. But as it stands, but from what I remember, character-wise, it's almost the weakest. Not quite the weakest character-wise, but like his girlfriend, I think, was like a dull character. His sister was kind of a dull character. I don't even remember. There's one other guy and maybe another person. I don't even remember.
I'm there with you though. For as much as I think this is great, I don't remember anyone aside from Ash.
I know I'm harping on the characters, and that is kind of unfair. Like I said, I don't remember much from it, so but as it stands, that's just kind of my opinion at the moment. I need to rewatch it in order to get a better opinion of it, and I will. You know what? I'll comment on this video if I rewatch it and I change my mind.
I got you. So, Ethan, I'll go first. I have Evil Dead 1981 ranked as my second favorite of the 5 Evil Dead movies in the franchise. Where,
and for me,
yep.
For me, I give it number 4. Not quite the bottom, but I think the Evil Dead franchise gets better.
Alrighty, that brings us to Evil Dead 2. Critically, I'm not sure. I think on Letterboxd this might be the highest rated. I could be wrong on that.
You're right. Yeah. It's the highest rated, maybe by a long shot.
This is, to me, the one that kind of perfects what Raimi was able to do in the first one. But I'm gonna read the synopsis real quick. Ash and his girlfriend Linda find a log cabin in the woods with a voice recording from an archaeologist. who had recording himself reciting ancient chants from the Book of the Dead. As they play the recording, an evil power is unleashed, taking over Linda's body. Okay, so I kind of thought, as you were kind of going through the characters, so in Evil Dead 2, does it kind of disregard that Ash was in this exact scenario previously?
Yeah,
Okay.
Evil Dead 2, the first 10 minutes of it is basically a remake of the original. And then that's when, once like his girlfriend turns into a deadite and she's pretty much gone, and then Ash is, it's kind of like a recap of the first movie without like all of the rest of the characters, and then he when he gets possessed by the deadite for a moment, he that's basically where the second one picks up from.
Okay. So this, like, it went even more over the top. Like, it felt like it had something to prove and, like, wanted to outdo the first one. And
Yeah.
I thought all of those creative choices and going, like, let's one up it, I thought it all worked out. And, like, the
Yeah.
Deadites were awesome. You know, the humor and the absurdity plays really, really well in this one. So it's like that formula that Raimi made in the first one, he was able to like distill into a carefully crafted, super creative and enjoyable second one.
Mm-hmm.
Ethan, oh, and then rating, I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5. Ethan, what were your thoughts?
This right here is how you do a horror sequel. Raimi took everything from the first movie and like you said, he one-upped it in almost every way. Like, the pacing is one-upped. Like, there's so much that happens in it. It's like a bonkers movie. There's a lot of, like, it deals with a lot of horror elements as well, like some really fun horror elements. The tone, I think, is perfected to a T. I think Ash really comes into his own in this movie. He's not like overly serious, but he's not overly goofy either. I said the original Evil Dead is iconic. I feel like this one is more iconic. Like, whenever I think Evil Dead, the first thing I think of is Ash revving up his chainsaw, sticking his sawed-off shotgun into his back satchel, and saying "groovy." That's the first thing that I think of when I think Evil Dead, and this movie is kind of a masterpiece. I also give it a 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah, this is like Ash felt like, you know, like a protagonist in the first, and he became like a horror movie icon in this one.
Yeah.
And I feel like they extend that, like the playing with Bruce Campbell / Ash's character is kind of what they took as, this is what we want to kind of focus on in the third of the trilogy, but it couldn't have been done without this one. If you would have went straight from Evil Dead to Army of Darkness, it would have felt like too far of a jump, I think, for Ash. Do you kind of agree?
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Definitely.
And like, you know, I'm trying to think, you know, Jamie Lee Curtis is linked with the Halloween franchise, despite the fact she's not in all of them, obviously. But can you think of another horror protagonist that is as well known and I'll just say iconic as Ash Williams.
Well, the only other horror movie protagonist that I can think of that's close to, well, I mean, Laurie Strode is iconic. There's no doubt about it. But I definitely think another one that is a contender, kind of, is Heather Langenkamp for Nightmare on Elm Street as Nancy Thompson.
Yeah, she came to my
Or
mind as well.
and also maybe Sidney Prescott from Scream.
Yeah.
But Ash competes with them all for the most iconic horror movie protagonist.
And you know what is really unique and also kind of a cool thing is that he is, and again, there might be some out there, but the only protagonist, to my knowledge, that is like linked to the weaponry.
Yes, one of the few.
Exactly.
Like, the antagonist usually in these horror movies, they're linked to their weaponry, but the shotgun is iconic, the chainsaw hand is iconic, and the original Evil Dead didn't even have the chainsaw hand. That everything that was iconic about Bruce Campbell's character of Ash was in Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. That's such a cool, like, character building thing to do with that character, is to show him chopping his own hand off and then sticking a chainsaw on it. That just feels badass.
Yeah, he's like he's one of those, like, protagonists who is very goofy but also incredibly awesome.
And it's blood fueled. There's tons and tons of blood, that's like a series hallmark at this point. And those I can still, and I can't remember when I'm gonna look at what my review is dated. I think it's been months and months since I watched this movie. Okay, over a year ago. And I still remember those chasing shots, right, where you're supposed to get like a perspective shot of the evil flowing through the forest.
Yeah.
It was like, those are such cool shots, my favorite shots from the movie. And when it's like breaking the doors down behind Ash, and it just gets more and more ludicrous, where he's like basically in like almost a crawl space, but it's not short, it's just super skinny, and they're both getting through it. I'm like, one, that would be hard to get that in one take, but it's like, it's bordering on ridiculous, but I'm still enjoying it the whole time.
Yeah. It's so creative with its visuals. Like, just when you think it's reached its peak, it tops itself in a way that you're never expecting. Like, just interesting visuals, interesting comedic moments, like visual gags, interesting, like, really cool horror moments. It's just all done to, like, near perfection in my mind.
I agree. Ethan, I'll let you say your ranking first.
It's easily the best Evil Dead movie. It's number one. In my mind, it's the best.
Yep, same here. I think it's unequivocally the numero uno. And up next, it's the final Sam Raimi movie of the franchise at this point, and that is Army of Darkness. This one is a slight departure from the original two, in which at the end of Evil Dead 2, Ash is kind of sucked in, and I think it even shows how Army of Darkness begins. I could be wrong on that. But he's transported to 1380, where he has to battle an army of the dead and retrieve the Necronomicon, which is the Book of the Dead, so he can return home. I really enjoyed this as well. I watched it pretty recently. This is definitely, without a doubt, the most comedic of any of the movies. And whereas, like, obviously you could define the first two as like horror comedies, you could also say they're horrors with comedic elements. This is like, you can't define it as only a horror. There's really strong comedic elements to this.
Yeah.
And obviously, going back to 1300 AD, I mean, it becomes a period piece at the same time, which, me kind of liking movies that are period pieces and this time period as well, I kind of enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the creative liberty that they were able to kind of explore by doing something like that. And to my mind, I don't know if there was any way they could have topped Evil Dead 2, but I really respected the creative direction to take it to this place for Army of Darkness as a way to kind of follow it up without feeling like we're going to do it in a cabin again and just try to make it even more outrageous. So I felt like there wasn't anywhere else to go besides making a kind of creative departure like they did with this one. So I enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 as well. Ethan, your thoughts?
I, again, been a little bit, so it's going to be a little fuzzy, but yeah, Army of Darkness goes almost not horror. Honestly, I don't even consider this a horror movie. It's a comedy, adventure, action, period film. And just what Sam Raimi tried to do with this movie, I really commend him for. Just like completely thinking out of the box. And obviously it bombed because because Army of Darkness, it's not the same as Evil Dead, and nobody's gonna go see a movie that's like that, really. But it's got a really great cult following, and for good reason. It's really, really fun. More amazing one-liners from Bruce Campbell. And it's a movie that it's easily the funniest movie in the Evil Dead franchise, and I just enjoy all the creative liberties that Sam Raimi took with it, and I also give it a 4 out of 5.
Awesome. Yeah, the thing that I felt like is Bruce Campbell in this role reminded me if like Clint Eastwood was put in a zombie film.
Yeah, kind of. Except
go ahead.
Clint Eastwood didn't really talk that much in like.
True.
Yeah. But yeah, he's very much like one-liner centric character.
Yeah.
If that's what you were referring to.
Exactly. Like it fits very much into, I think, what we like. That time period was really, the action hero was evolving, and due to the likes of like a Sylvester Stallone and an Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I think Bruce Willis was probably starting to come into his own around this time period to become one of the biggest movie stars of all time. But it felt like very inspired by those types, and not, I won't say parodying them, but it was like Raimi's version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that track for you?
Yeah, kind of. Like Bruce Campbell. Bruce Campbell could have been a star. He could have honestly been a Hollywood star, but unfortunately, like, I guess he wasn't able to get there. But he's like one of the most celebrated cult actors of all time for good reason, because he's the closest a cult actor has come to being a movie star. Like he's got comedic timing. He's charming. He's dashing. He's good looking. He's just a really he's just a lightning caught in a jar kind of actor, and I think Army of Darkness seals that as the truth in my mind.
I agree, and like this felt like the most heavy, like the movie that most heavily relies on him. All movies do rely on him, but this one really excelled directly because of Bruce Campbell, and the practical effects were really neat and interesting, and the camera work, as always, was pretty good. But it felt like this movie wasn't entirely elevated by those aspects the way that maybe 1 and 2 were. This one relied a lot more on Bruce Campbell's performance, and suffice to say, his performance to me was great because I think the movie was great because of him.
It fit the tone really well. It's just like a fish out of water type scenario, and like he just fit what this movie was going for, and I think that's why it's become as celebrated as it is. It really sealed Ash Williams as just like an iconic figure in pop culture, and just in pop culture in general. And you said something earlier that Bruce Campbell makes every movie better. Yeah, he does. And every movie should have Bruce Campbell in it. Every single one. Schindler's List should have had Bruce Campbell. The King's Speech should have had Bruce Campbell in it. Mm-hmm. Every movie should have Bruce Campbell.
Whether it's a cameo or a leading performance, every movie can benefit from Bruce Campbell.
Exactly. Have you seen? Sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, have you seen any other movies or TV shows with Bruce Campbell in it?
I haven't watched the Evil Dead TV show, and I wanted to. I'm pretty sure he's in that, but no. These 3 are the only Bruce Campbell performances I've seen. How about you?
Well, aside from cameos, I haven't really. I mean, I've seen the Raimi Spider-Man movies, and he's in. Oh. I haven't seen the third one. But he has a cameo in all 3.
I do kind of recall that.
Have you seen Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs?
I have not yet. I heard it is a good movie, right?
It's a fun animated movie that's just kind of fun. It's Bill Hader plays the main character.
Love Bill Hader.
Yeah, James Caan plays his dad.
Okay.
But kind of the main villain is played by Bruce Campbell.
That's cool. I could see him being very good at voice work.
Mm-hmm. No, he's great. He's really great in the movie. But he's done like TV work. He did TV work in the 90s to like now. He did a movie called Bubba Hotep.
Oh.
Where
I've seen that post on Tubi.
Yeah. It's apparently pretty bonkers. It's like his character thinks he's Elvis, and there's an African American man who's his friend who thinks he's JFK, and they fight like mummified zombies, I think. it's just like it's a crazy movie from what I've heard.
Yeah, your description and also the summary on Tubi sounded insane, and we'll see. One of these nights I'll just randomly put it on. But I didn't know Bruce Campbell played Elvis. I can actually see him doing a pretty good Elvis impersonation. The one thing I'll say, kind of going back to your statement about Bruce Campbell should be in every movie, I do, and I think he's at least a producer, maybe even an executive producer for the reboots that we're about to go over. Do you think those movies could have benefited from his involvement on screen?
They're going for different tones. I don't think it would work for the 2013 one. Maybe. No, I actually don't think either of them would have worked with Bruce Campbell. I know I said every movie would be better with him. It was a joke. I don't think he can really do like overly serious, and not that Evil Dead Rise. I don't think Evil Dead Rise is that serious. I think out of every single Evil Dead movie, the 2013 one is easily the one that takes itself the most seriously. But I don't think that would work. I don't think maybe he could work in Evil Dead Rise, but I don't think he would work in the 2013 one. Even though at the very, very end, after the credits, he does have one cameo.
Okay, when we go over those movies, if you remember the post credits, because I didn't see either of the post credit scenes.
I didn't know there was one in the 2013. I don't think there is any in the not the 2013 one, but the Evil Dead Rise movie.
Okay. Good. I totally see your point. I think it could have spoiled it, especially if he didn't kind of have a very, very serious tone, especially in the 2013 one. I would have liked to have like kind of challenged him as an actor, like, hey, look, we need you to play this one completely straight. You know, it's a darker, completely serious, somber tone. Because I do think part of me wants to believe he would have been able to have that. But fan service sometimes, if you let it get too out of hand, and that could have easily been doing that, it might have overshadowed what the film was going for. So
yeah,
I kind of, the person who came to love him would have been excited for that, but I do think they were able to kind of really capture what they wanted well. Ethan, let me ask you, Army of Darkness, where does this rank for the franchise?
I really, really like this movie. I think it's great. I give it my number 2.
There we go. Okay, so we're a lot closer together than I thought. I have this as my number 3. So far, I think our biggest discrepancy was Evil Dead 1. And honestly, from my perspective, that's the one I don't remember the most. So I can't super argue with you on that either.
Yeah, I have. It's been a while since I've seen the original, but I have seen your Letterboxd reviews for these last 2, and it'll be in conversation.
Alrighty, jumping right into it. Evil Dead 2013 by Fede Alvarez. Is that how you would pronounce it, Ethan?
Yeah, Fede Alvarez. I don't know. He's from Uruguay, and he did this movie.
This movie follows Mia and her group of friends as she is trying to come clean, I think, off of heroin, though I don't think they ever straight up say it. They just show a substance and allude to a substance issue. So she's trying to get clean and go through withdrawals. And in this cabin, one of her friends makes the discovery of the Book of the Dead and reads from it, which summons demons which possess this group one by one. First thing I want to say, Jane Levy, she's the woman who plays the person trying to become clean. And you get a really wide array of performance from her that I really, really enjoyed. When I first saw this, I remember it distinctly stuck with me. And then I rated it based off of fuzzy memory. I watched it again last week sometime before watching Evil Dead Rises and bumped it up a little bit more. But I enjoyed the serious tone. I didn't prefer the serious tone. And I enjoyed all the homage that it paid to the original, as well as the gritty and dark, violent scenes, as well as the special effects and makeup. I thought that was all really well done as well, and gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Ethan, what was your take on this one?
Well, it's definitely different tone-wise from 1 and 3. What Sam Raimi did was he got goofier with it, and Fede Alvarez looked at that and said, "I'm going to a serious tone." And I think the premise is really the best part about the movie. I think the idea of like the demons almost become a metaphor of drug addiction.
Yes.
And I think that is very interesting. I don't like Fede Alvarez filmmaker that much. I thought the shots... I did not like this movie visually very much. I thought it reminded me too much of like a James Wan movie, like The Conjuring, which I also thought was meh. Visually. Everything has to look like gross and dry. I don't really like that in movies unless you're able to do something interesting with it. I usually like a rich movie, like a horror movie. Doesn't have to be. It doesn't. I don't want it to be like drab all the time. I usually really love like a richly colored film, which is why I love like Dario Argento movies, like Giallo movies like that, because they're so richly colored and kind of beautiful to look at. I could say the same thing with The Thing, which I'm actually I'll talk about that later. But yeah, for this movie, I just didn't dig it, honestly. Like, visually, it's my least favorite. Character-wise, it's maybe my least favorite. I think what's her name, Mia, is the most interesting character, and that's really about it. I gave this a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, so I'm going to agree with you on the characters. Mia, by far and away, was the most interesting character. With that being said, I think Bruce Campbell's like performance in 2 trumps Mia's performance in this one. So it's not like it wasn't the greatest performance either, so it didn't have that to completely lean on to make it good. Though where this movie excels, so does Jane Levy, or Levy. Because like her brother as a character was like pretty meh. His girlfriend was just not that character did not have a lot to do, and she like could have just not been there. She was almost just there to die and then be a deadite. That felt a little bit, some of the characters, that kind of felt like, well, her was the most. The nurse character was okay. But what really, really, the one performance that had it been better would have helped this movie a lot, I think would have been the brother, because that's an aspect that the original 2 and even 3 gets into a little bit, but it doesn't maximize, is the fact that in the opening of this movie does it kind of well. It puts it in your head that the demons trick you, that even though they're possessed, they want to make you feel so bad that you have to kill them, right? And that has that has huge consequences in the plot of this as to why it turns out the way it does in the ending. But I feel like there could have been a lot more scenes that really maximize that impact had that actor played his role better.
Yes. Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you on that. Really, let me rephrase my statement. What I said earlier, I think the characters themselves, overall, are better written than the first Evil Dead, but the movie itself is just like, it just feels caught up in its own like self-serious tone, and dealing with like I don't know. It's just it's a tone that didn't work for me in Evil Dead form. And the first Evil Dead, I know I ragged on that movie, but at least there were moments that were memorable. At least it was impressive from a filmmaking standpoint. At least it was like it was a film first, and I'm not saying that Fede Alvarez put the themes first, but the themes are the best part about the film, and in my mind, the only like good part about it. And like the editing is pretty choppy. It's there's moments in this movie that are actually goofy, but it's not intentional.
I gotcha. Yeah, I could see that. Without Raimi's flair behind the camera, that flair is able to kind of bridge any gap. If there's any like where you're not quite sure what to do with the script, that was something that he could utilize to like reinvigorate the audience. This film didn't quite have that, and what it really seemed to lean upon was the gruesome scenes, and that was kind of its bread and butter with this. That's what it tried to, when it turned the screws on that, that's how it tried to get the audience back, the way that I viewed the film. And some of it was really effective, and for me, Jane Levy was also super, super impressive as a Deadite. Like, she was captivating every time she was on screen. And and the other Deadites didn't quite do it for me. The nurse's death really was that was like traumatic to watch.
Yeah.
So that the gore really did kind of bring it, but that felt like Evil Dead felt like more than that. It was able to, it had multiple facets that it was able to bring the entertainment value with. Does that make sense?
Yes. And like, I've always been someone who is more like, I want filmmakers to say something with their films, like obviously, and like the fact that I'm putting the more surface level Evil Dead movies over like the one that actually kind of says something a little bit, I feel like is a bit arbitrary in my mind, and that's why I'm like, it kind of pains me that I didn't like it much. Yeah.
So it pains you that you didn't like it as much, but maybe you were kind of, I think, maybe alluding to why you were touching upon the things that didn't work.
Yeah. Like I usually prefer like writing over filmmaking, but in this case, I feel like Evil Dead is usually about the filmmaking, and the creativity usually comes from the filmmaking. And the writing for the 2013 Evil Dead is it's better than some of the others, but as far as like an Evil Dead movie, it's just not that interesting to me.
I agree. They had there was substance with the drug abuse angle, and I think if you had another subplot, and look, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but something for the other characters to also relate. Do you know what I mean? I think that would have done wonders as well. So I would have recast the brother, and then maybe something where it's like their perspective of this friend with the drug use affected them in this way. Or maybe it's something completely unrelated, just a real side plot for them to get into. That would have been... It would have really excelled. Because I do think some of the aspects would have been able to cover up for the lack of like a real flair behind the camera. I could be wrong though too, but there it just feels like there is something missing for me at least.
Yeah.
Ethan, I rank this one 4th out of 5. Where are you at with this one?
This one's the bottom for me. I give it the fifth place, even though solid effort, but for me it's the weakest of all of the Evil Dead movies.
Absolutely. Now the final one, this one just came out April 21st. It is Evil Dead Rise, and the director of this film is Lee Cronin. Two sisters find an ancient book. Well, the sisters don't find... No. Two sisters...
It's the son. It's the son and the daughter that find the book.
I'm gonna cut that from the Letterboxd summary. I'm gonna keep it in the recording, but I'm gonna cut it from my summary. A book is found by a son that gives birth to bloodthirsty demons that run amok in a Los Angeles apartment building and thrust them into a primal battle for survival as they face the most nightmarish version of family imaginable. This one, Ethan, is maybe the one that we disagree the most on. Although I don't think our ratings are too dissimilar, if I remember yours correctly.
I think we disagree more on the first Evil Dead in terms of ratings, but I think we have a lot more to say about this than the first Evil Dead.
So to me, this film, it has a more serious tone than the original 3. It's and you are definitely correct. You made the distinction that this is also... I might have flipped what I meant to say. This is more serious than the original 3, but less serious than Evil Dead 2013. But I don't feel like it gets to capitalize on that more serious tone the way that its predecessor did, nor does it get to capitalize on its less serious tone the way that its predecessors did as well. I felt like it was kind of a weird middle ground. The mother character really, really excelled for me. She fills kind of that Jane Levy type of scenario where she was pretty interesting as a human and very interesting as a Deadite. So anytime she was on screen, I feel like the movie benefited. And I think the filmmakers realized that because she was heavily utilized in the marketing of this film.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like the sister was an interesting character, and I felt like the youngest daughter was interesting. The son and the other daughter weren't really interesting to me. I won't say they're as bad as some of the characters in Evil Dead 2013, but I was kind of rooting for them to die in this film. I'm not afraid to admit it. But the mom was the scariest part, but when she wasn't on screen, it like this film didn't like have me at all. And like this film, it nowadays, like as you watch more and more horror films, it's hard to be genuinely scared. And I wasn't really scared by any of these films, but Evil Dead was able to kind of capture this like dark and gritty feeling where some of the really gross and disturbing scenes felt more disturbing. In this film, like the really what I think they were trying to be disturbing with didn't strike me as disturbing, which sounds maybe a bit ridiculous, but I felt the Evil Dead felt 2013. I keep having to make that distinction. Felt way more disturbing with like the gross aspects than this one did. And I don't want to spoil this for anyone, so I'm going to keep it relatively vague, but you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, Ethan. The creature type formation thing that the Deadites did at the end, the kind of, I'm going to call it a spider human. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It didn't work for me, and it honestly, it would have been more beneficial to not do that, because it was like, now I know the one thing I have to worry about as opposed to like multiple things, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Character design wise, though, the mom is maybe one of the best Deadite designs, and the peephole shots that they got from her, that was really creative cinematography, and that worked really well in horror.
Mm-hmm.
So that kept me from like disliking this film. I think it's good. I think it's above average for sure, but I give this one a 3 out of 5.
Mm-hmm. So I really, really enjoyed Evil Dead Rise. There are aspects of it that I really enjoy. I think Lee Cronin did a much better job directing this movie than Fede Alvarez directed the 2013 Evil Dead. Again, like I said, the rich atmosphere. A lot of the aspects of this movie reminded me of The Thing. Even with the at the end with the fusion of the Deadites,
I can see that.
It felt very much like the ending of The Thing, but like all those rich colors and all those vibrant shots are really, really well done. I really liked this movie visually. Honestly, I felt an aspect of like motherhood in there, which I don't think is as interesting as the drug addiction stuff in the 2013 Evil Dead, but I still think that was a really interesting touch. The acting is pretty darn good, aside from a lot of the other actors, like the side actors, because a lot of the side characters, not including the family, a lot of the side characters are clearly not American, because this movie was directed by an Irish director. It stars the two sisters are both Australian, and it was shot in New Zealand. So it's not an American movie, and it takes place in Los Angeles, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I really overall enjoyed it more than I enjoyed both the Evil Dead 2013 and the original Evil Dead, from what I remember, and I give this a 3.5 out of 5.
Two things that I liked. One you brought up, and I'm gonna get to that second. But I liked that. I think this was the first movie outside of Army of Darkness that refers to the fact that there's multiple books. At least that's the way that's interpretive, though. I don't think it's like clear as day. Although in the recording they might have referred to that as well. I'm not certain. But that there can be, this doesn't just exist in that cabin, right? Which is like up to this movie, that's basically been where everything's stemmed from. Like obviously Army of Darkness takes place in 1300 AD, but Ash, which is the character we're following, came from the cabin from 2, which is where the movie's set, and 1, where the movie's also set. And then the remake, obviously, they happen to visit that very same cabin and kind of retell that story with a spin. So that was like an interesting way to branch out, what do you call it? Like, setting-wise.
Yeah.
Usually the beginning, like I like when they do, I guess you could call it like a cold open, where it's just like we're diving right into the middle of something brutal that's going to happen, that's going to immediately catch your attention. I like that they did it. For whatever reason, it didn't creep me out the whole way. And also the way that they died wasn't, it didn't grab me. It definitely got my attention, but it didn't grab me the way that, I think you could make a cold open with an Evil Dead movie where like, hey, we're going to show brutality right off the bat, that it could have, I guess.
Yeah. I get that. I definitely get that.
But the second point that you made, where it kind of delves into motherhood, and it's like you almost get the what word am I looking for? A more pessimistic view of the mother and her relationships with her children via the Deadite. It's almost like you get, maybe it feels like there's like a bit of genuineness, and that's why it hurts the children so much, that it's like, I have to like put up with you. You know, it's commenting on the real world chemistry and relationships between them via the Deadite to inflict emotional damage. That I did greatly enjoy, because we've had boyfriend-girlfriend relationships and brothers-sisters, but we've never had
a full family.
Exactly. The only piece that I think is very notable for me, and you can definitely counter this, is that those strong bonds didn't feel, that the script didn't kind of explore that enough, where it's like, a lot of the other films kind of use that sympathy where they kind of change from Deadite to human in order to kind of manipulate the protagonists. It didn't feel like it used that heavily enough for me, where that would have been like an easy way for the script to explore something that the script could have easily explored. It certainly did with the younger daughter. And I'm remembering that scene now where she's at the front door and that's how she gets in. Outside of that, I felt like it definitely could have been explored a lot with the sisters. And where it could have explored their dynamic while she's a Deadite with the sister, but it didn't feel like it was fleshed out enough.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I can't really argue with that. It's definitely not. It's not fleshed out in the same way that the drug addiction stuff is fleshed out in the original, and kind of like there's almost like a hereditary aspect to the not the original, the 2013 Evil Dead, like how there was a like almost a hereditary aspect to that, like drug addiction and mental illness, in that movie, and it is interesting, but I appreciated the the filmmaking and the stakes. I feel were a lot more realized in my mind than in the 2013 one. And like the chemistry is, it felt like a real relationship that a lot of the characters had in Evil Dead Rise. To me,
I agree with that too. I can definitely see that. And that is most realized, and I think makes the ending as important as it is. And to your point, makes the stakes what they are because of the bond that's built between the aunt and the niece.
Yeah, definitely.
And
it reminded me of Ripley and Newt from Aliens a little bit.
I see that. Although, okay, I take that back. I have not seen Aliens.
Oh, I see.
But come the end of the film, you're polling for those two.
Yes.
There was time that for their relationship to develop, and as their relationship developed, I came to like them the most.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
What were you gonna say before I rudely interrupted you?
No, you didn't interrupt me at all. No, I didn't have anything to say.
Yeah, I guess we're not terribly apart on this.
I think we're not really terribly apart on anything. I think we're just like the opposite of like, I don't know, like some podcast where like we can rant on certain things and like we argue with each other on it. But I mean, like what we're having right now is civilized discourse.
Exactly.
And maybe people will appreciate it. I definitely appreciate civilized discourse.
Yeah, I do too. Well, because at the end of the day, talking about film is like kind of you're celebrating in a way, right?
Yeah.
And there's a place for screaming matches too. I just think that's not really our personalities.
I definitely don't want to scream at you.
Yeah, I put kind of like remind me some of the scenes that you really liked. I think I just didn't put enough weight behind what was done well.
The peephole scene
great.
is a standout easily. Like horror, it's how to do horror and the vibrant, like I said, the vibrant colors really pop in it. I love that scene a lot. The scene where the older daughter is transforming into a deadite is kind of brutal to watch to me. I thought that was really gross. Not as gross as some of the stuff in 2013. I definitely agree with you that 2013 was more brutal. But I guess Lee Cronin didn't want to go like too far. I think something that, like, for example, like I'm gonna spoil a movie that you might not have seen. The 1988 film The Blob.
I have not seen it.
Directed by Chuck Russell, and written by Frank Darabont, who directed The Shawshank Redemption, which is my favorite movie of all time. But there is a sequence in that movie where Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont both just had the balls to do something that a lot of directors are scared to do, even nowadays, which is basically it's kill a child, and kill a child in the most gruesome way possible.
That is true. I completely agree with you. A lot of directors are scared to do that. The Black Phone is kind of a good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Children die, but they don't show it.
Yeah. But Evil Dead Rise, like these kids are not like the like they didn't have Lee Cronin didn't have the balls to kill off the little girl, which I mean is fair. That's fine. It's important for the story that she's there. But the older brother and the older daughter, that kind of takes a little bit of courage to kind of kill off those characters, because they're not young, but they're not super old either. So just like the corruption of youth is within that. Again, like similar to something like The Exorcist, which is like the complete corruption of innocence in a way.
I agree. It's definitely they did a lot more than some movies would be willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you felt the weight of it is what you're saying.
Yeah, I felt the weight of it more so than the 2013 one.
Yeah. I can see that. So the scene in particular with the daughter, was that when she's in the kitchen and she got the tattoo gun on her face, right? And then it started to spread. Is that the scene that you're talking about?
Yeah, well, yeah, when stuff started coming out of her nose. I thought that was
the black liquid.
Yeah, that was gross.
I do recall that. that. There was also, I will say, and I'm glad I didn't like eviscerate this film, because I did enjoy it. I didn't leave the film like, damn, I'm disappointed that I went to see this. I think maybe I went into it imagining more like because the trailers, and I think someone had said something similar to what I'm about to say, but I think there's truth in it. There's really no point in watching trailers anymore.
I completely agree.
I think you're either going to spoil something that is good about the movie, or you're going to get false expectations about what is going to transpire.
Yeah. Good example. I know I mentioned this movie about 20 times and how much I despise it. Can you guess what movie I'm going to reference?
Smile.
Yeah. The trailer for Smile ruined about half of the scares that it had. The other half were obviously terrible. But, like, I mean, I know, I read your review on Smile. I know you enjoyed that movie. And that's fair. That's definitely fair. But I just thought all of the scares, aside from 2, were inexcusably terrible.
I think not watching the trailer of that. I remember people. My girlfriend's sister was talking about some of the promotional material. I must just not be in their what do you call it? Their market. What do they call it? Like the age bracket that you try to sell to.
The demographic.
The demographic. I didn't see shit for that movie. Legitimately.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw one trailer. I didn't see any of the stuff she was talking about. I think you were the first person that told me
A beat style.
yeah, I think you were the person and you were like, it's bad. And like people were saying it when that made me look at reviews. And I was like, I gotta check it out now. Cause you were very much disliking it. I will say the ending, aside from the creature thing, not a fan. Didn't like the ending aside from that creature thing. The creature looked cool, I thought.
Yeah.
You remember the thing? It's like a almost like an infinite set of mouths type of demon.
Yeah. Okay, honesty time. That image got me way more than I wanted it to.
Okay.
I will admit it. Like, but it felt so cheap. It just felt so cheap. A way to do horror. Just like, all right, just throw like a demon in your face. Let's make it the freakiest thing and just like get a bunch of close-ups on its face and everything. The demon design was cool, but it's just like, my God. If I watched that, if I was front row in the biggest theater, in the biggest auditorium I had at my local theater, I was front row for that. So I had a front row seat to that image. If it was anything else, it wouldn't affect me as nearly as much as it did, and it just felt so cheap. I watched. To put in perspective how much I hated it, I watched 12 Years a Slave to get the movie out of my head. Fantastic movie, but not a happy movie by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh no. Yeah, I thought the demon design that would have freaked me out if I saw that in theaters, because I think it's wholly unexpected. Am I correct? There was like a giant mom type demon before that.
Yes.
That I thought was stupid. I was like, okay, this is not doing much for me. I was glad that next demon came, though, I will say.
Mm-hmm. And then it's just like the movie. I know people like that horror. Like, I like the horror when. I do like it when there is a movie that, like. It's you have something that you can't understand and you're trying to figure it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Smile is one of those where it just never felt like it went anywhere.
True. Plot wise, it could have realized something. It did fumble the ending, and honestly, it was the shots. It, like, in theory, the demonic force was what carried the day for me. Like, just the premise behind it. If they had realized the ending, and I don't know the way to perfectly rewrite it, but it felt like and this might be a movie, I'm not sure if you've seen it. This movie felt very similar, the entirety of it, but especially the ending, to Truth or Dare. Are you familiar with
Mm.
that?
I've heard of it, and uh, I think I know what you're talking about as far as the ending of that movie.
See, the way you feel about Smile is the way I feel about Truth or Dare, where it's just like not a whole lot of that movie worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
And this film is very similar to it, but the deaths in Smile at least were like it really creeped me out. Where I was like,
Yeah.
that's just really, and it's kind of scary that it's like, yeah, like I can imagine the knowledge if you saw what happened and knowing that's your fate. That's also real. That's a scary prospect.
Yeah. But it felt so predictable. Felt so predictable.
With what you said about the ending, I should have predicted. I thought they were going to wrap it up in a way that was like weighty. But after what
Yeah.
you told me, I should have had lesser expectations at the end. I'm telling you though, I don't know the way to do it, but they could have finished that movie and it could have been very substantial because they had like that added aspect about her mother, and that was the mother like part of like the beginning of the demon or no?
I don't even know. Like I genuinely don't even know.
I don't know. Like you could have explored the reality of people taking their own lives. Honestly, right? You have
Yeah.
and part of that is you have to do that really, really carefully because you're going to very much upset a lot of people if you don't do it with some tact. But I think it could have like explored that the demon is metaphorical. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just wish they did something interesting. Just didn't
Exactly.
feel. It just felt so predictable. It felt so generic. And the fact that it got me so much with the end is like, I refuse to call this scary though. I refuse. Like the scariest movie I've ever seen is Hereditary in my mind. If I saw that in the theater, I'd get nightmares, legitimately.
See, I did see that in theaters, and I'm gonna follow up this whole statement as with another story just to keep everything on the up and up. Saw that in theaters. Nothing quite got me like sympathizing with the son at the critical. I don't know if you could call it climax because it's about the halfway point, but it felt very climactic, and it's after the sister ate the walnuts or whatever, and he's driving home.
Yeah.
That like I haven't felt that's what distinguishes Ari Aster's horror. And I'm gonna ask you about Beau is Afraid after this whole spiel.
Oh yeah.
I've never felt anything like that in horror, besides with Ari Aster, and Midsummer did it too, where it's like you literally it's like the pit in the bottom of your stomach that I've only felt in real life when like really terrible news gets told to you.
Yeah. Like yeah. That scene in Hereditary, I have never been as slack jawed as I was with that scene. I was in complete shock.
Yeah.
Like you've just witnessed something terrible.
And I was like, it kind of numbed me up to where some of the horrific scenes, like the piano wire scene at the end,
Yeah.
I was like, this is obviously disturbing as all get out. but like it didn't strike me the way that first scene did.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
The it was funny because when I was watching it, when that scene happened, my sister was in the room, and she said to me, "Oh my God, what the F are you watching?"
yeah, that's a brutal scene.
It's a brutal scene.
Yeah, Ari Aster is like, dude, that's genius, and
Yeah.
I think that might be like the new way, because I don't even know, it seems like it transcends like shocking, right?
Yeah, well, it transcends the film registry, like the cinematic registry of shocking.
Mm-hmm.
Like it transcends that into just properly shocking.
Exactly. So for him, like he's got greatness marked in my eyes. Like I feel like he could become one of the best horror directors of all time, and I think he's going to be considered one of the greatest of all times when things are all said and done. I want to say something that is going to hopefully be a little bit embarrassing for me, but ingratiate me amongst people listening, and hopefully with you as well, Ethan. But the film that got me the worst in theaters was Paranormal Activity, the OG. I saw it in theaters. The ending where something gets thrown at the camera.
It's a pillow.
I tensed so much that I cramped, and then like the movie's at a fever pitch, right? Because the audio's just getting blown out during this scene. I just started yelling, "Cramp, cramp!" as that scene was going down. But yeah, that one scared me. I had to shut my bed. I still keep my bedroom door shut. But that's
So you watched this. So go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. So that's because I started having to, because then like at night I would look at my door, and if it was like a little bit open, the crack in the door would like creep me out, and I had to shut it. I've kept it shut ever since.
um. Yeah. How old were you when you saw that?
I'll look up when that came out to give you.
Came out in 2007.
No shit. Okay, so that was 16 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. So I was 11 when that came out.
I see.
I thought I was older. I thought I was in high school when that came out. Yeah. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm 27 right now. 16 years ago, I would have been 11.
Yeah. And I was not quite 3 when it came out.
That explains a lot more why I got so scared. I thought I was like 14. And it was just like, I remember my dad and my brother, us three, we used to go see movies together like all the time. We live like our house growing up is legitimately, you could walk to the theater in 5 minutes or drive to the theater in like 2 minutes, right? It's really, really close. But that's if we could literally cut through our yard to get there, and that's why we'd get there so quickly. But anywho, they're like, we got to go see this new movie came out, and knew nothing going in, and it just, dude, it creeped me out so much. Nothing has ever had that type of effect on me, both afterwards and like in theaters, than that movie.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I don't really like Paranormal Activity. I just think the characters in that movie do a lot of like really dumb things. But I watched this like a year ago,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just like, yeah, you know. And but like an 11-year-old watching that in the theater, yeah, I could definitely see.
I didn't realize
Like,
I was that young. That's crazy that you. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed 2007.
yeah,
You
um,
have to remember too. There was, and you're like, as an 11-year-old, I obviously wasn't piecing this together,
yeah,
but
yeah,
they
yeah, yeah,
marketed it as like a Blair Witch type
yeah.
movie. And
Similar to
obviously,
Blair Witch.
exactly. And like it got distributed and it's in theaters, so you're like now that's a dead giveaway that it's like, look, you're not
Hmm.
watching real found footage, right? But at the
Yeah.
time in the back of your head you're like, oh, like is that real? You know what I mean? And like
Yes. Yes.
I was scared that the girl was gonna be like walk into the theater at the end of the movie. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It got me
Yeah.
that
No. No.
bad.
Yeah. I definitely see that. I definitely can get behind you on that. Um. Yeah. Very similar to Blair Witch. My favorite found footage is one that even if it wasn't like marketed in the same way, I still think is pretty darn scary. Wreck.
I think I have seen Wreck.
Hmm.
Is that is almost like an anthology? Am I correct on that? Or am I thinking of a
No,
completely different? I'm thinking VHS, I think.
yeah, VHS.
Okay. I
But
haven't seen Wreck.
Rec is there's you think when you think of found footage horror franchises, you think of correct me if I'm wrong, but you can think of four different franchises that pretty much dominated the found footage circle. That is Blair Witch, Paranormal Activity, Rec, and Unfriended. Um,
Oh yeah, I forgot about Unfriended. That's a good
uh,
one.
I have not seen it, um,
Let me
but
say, just I sorry to cut you off. There is a scene that my brother, and my dad all thought was hilarious. It's not supposed to be funny, but a kid puts his hand in a blender, and then you just see his head. He's like almost like a bobblehead. He's just like, oh my god. But yeah, we thought that was funny for some reason. Just the how ridiculous it is. But I'll let you go on. I had to get that out.
yeah. Out of all of those, though, Rec is the only non-English speaking one, and in my opinion,
Oh.
it's the best one because instead of like anything like possession
Uh-huh.
oriented, instead it's like a zombie film,
Mm-hmm.
and it's shot like found footage, and there's no like it's pure raw distilled horror in my mind. It's just like the most raw horror film that you can get, and it's pretty scary.
Yeah,
I definitely give it a watch.
I might know of this film. I might have started to watch it, but if this isn't the film you're talking about, it might be called Quarantine, if I'm wrong.
Okay, yes, Quarantine. That is
Okay.
the English version of Wreck.
Okay. So I have seen that. That is definitely I could see and I would imagine Wreck is done better as well.
Better.
Um
Yeah.
I could see that being really good. Cuz you're
Yeah.
going through a building and it's like you don't really know what you're walking into, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like it's pure horror, and it's better because I watched it during my 2021 October marathon. Um, because like during October, starting in 2020, I did like a horror movie marathon every October. It's been really fun. 2021 is probably my favorite because I watched the most, and I watched the most like great movies. And Rec was like nearly at the top of the best that I've seen. I also watched it while I was in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was in Massachusetts for the week, so I was just every time my everyone else would go to sleep, I would just hide under the covers and watch a movie on my phone, like a horror movie.
That's the
Watched a lot of
best.
great ones.
Watching with the
Yeah,
lights out late at night, that's the best horror atmosphere.
yeah. So I watched Wreck while I was there, and it was scary. I remember it being really scary.
Tell me about Beau is Afraid. First of all, is it
hmm
horror?
No, there's
Okay.
horror elements, but it's largely a darkly comedic epic.
Okay. Look, I'm gonna either see it in theaters or I'm definitely watching it. I mean, if Ari Aster puts his name on a turd, I'm at least gonna check it out and see if maybe there's something on the back. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
respect his creativity so much that I have to give it a watch. But yeah, I've seen mixed reviews. I don't know what the general consensus is now. Um, but
I
what are
think
your
it's his
thoughts?
least acclaimed. I think it's his least acclaimed, which is a shame because I like it a lot more than I like Midsummer. I think Midsummer's decent, but I don't love it. I think we've established this though. But Beau's Afraid is a relatable movie. Oddly, I think there's a lot of relatability to it for me personally. I actually watched it with one of my coworkers, and they didn't like it. Like they thought it was way too long. It's nearly 3 hours,
Yeah.
which I can understand, but like it just I think it's what Ari Aster does best. Just like dig into your soul and just leave you vulnerable. And I think that's exactly what he did with Beau's Afraid.
I can't wait to check it out. I do think that's the biggest barrier to entry right now, but I think he wanted, like, that's what he was building towards, right? Is to have the creative license to do a 3 hour movie and get
Yeah.
like a top actor. And I'm assuming, I mean, was Joaquin really good in this performance?
Yes, but the standout is actually from a actress by the name of Patti LuPone, which I'm not going to spoil what she does in the movie, but if you don't know who Patti LuPone is, I didn't either. And so I was like, and I felt kind of embarrassed when I realized that she's one of the most one of the most legendary Broadway actresses of all time.
Oh, okay. That's interesting that he like used a acclaimed Broadway star. I know. Um, what's his name? He's the lead in Synecdoche.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, he would frequently do Broadway because he felt like that was enriching his acting abilities, right? Because you're doing it every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same as,
Um,
and this really surprised me, but I'm forgetting his name too. He's it's not Will
I think
Ferrell, but he's also in
Nathan
Step
Lane.
Brothers.
Is it Nathan Lane?
No, I don't. I'm not
No.
familiar with that name. I probably have
He's
seen it.
also he's also a Broadway actor, and he was in one of my favorite comedy movies in the '90s called The Birdcage. He was
Haven't.
great in that. Definitely
He's
recommend The Birdcage. It's with Robin Williams. It's wonderful.
this guy. He has curly hair. Uh, John C.
Oh,
Riley.
C. Riley.
First of all, I had only known him from Step Brothers for the longest time, and then as I watched him more and more, I became really impressed with his ability. And then I was shocked that he did a Broadway play with um, Philip Seymour Hoffman, where they would switch
hmm
roles every day.
Yeah. I'm really stupid. I used your what you wanted to talk about with John C. Riley as a gateway to talk about Nathan Lane in Beau's Afraid. Because Nathan Lane is in Beau is Afraid. I thought that's what you were talking about. Please forgive me for my stupidity.
No, you're good. I have a really bad quality to me where a lot of times I'll start talking about something, and what will make it click in my head, I feel like sometimes I'll think that in the conversation that either A, I'll say it at the onset, which sometimes I don't, or two, that they'll just kind of be on the same ride that I'm on. And I've gotten caught in conversations where people will be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then after I explain, they're like, I wish you would have said that. So,
I'm the exact same way. The exact same way.
Yeah. If that ever happens, by no means is it your fault, because I have a tendency to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But so this Broadway actress LuPone, what's her first name again?
Patty LuPone.
Patty LuPone was the standout for you. Which, when you're billed against Joaquin, man, that's a huge compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of expected. Like, Joaquin's amazing, obviously. Like, the Master, Joker, her, Gladiator, Johnny Cash, Walk the Line.
Yeah.
So many incredible performances under his belt as like a movie actor. But Patty LuPone is legendary in her own right.
I mean, you don't get the publicity though. It's hard to know, especially if you don't watch Broadway. I mean, I've never been to Broadway myself. They're like,
nope.
they're very much kind of isolated, where you can be a legend on Broadway without, that might never be realized in the mainstream. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The one guy, he was the lead of Hamilton, something Emmanuel. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Are you talking about what Hamlet?
Oh no! Damn it!
Hamilton.
Yes.
Oh my goodness! Not Hamlet. Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yes, he was able to bridge the gap from like Broadway star to mainstream star, and that's because that Hamilton was like, just a huge rocket ship. It just made
revered, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But that rarely happens. I feel like there's got to be Broadway stars that just aren't known outside of that community.
Mm-hmm.
She's probably an example of that, is kind of what I was saying.
Yeah. I mean, we're gentlemen of the cinema. We're not really in that sphere. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah.
Movies are definitely my forte. So like, but I feel like I should have known who Patty LuPone was.
I gotcha. Her picture looks vaguely familiar, I will say though.
Mm-hmm.
Did you realize her from another role?
No.
Okay.
I feel like this is the first movie I've seen her in. I can't think of another one that she was in that I've seen.
Let me say one thing. I understand that you have to, obviously, speaking wise, and even the actions you take, you have to be more verbose or over the top with it, because on a stage you're playing to the people in the back row, right? And big screen acting, sometimes subtlety is more appreciated, right? But I will say, I guess I'm surprised that Broadway people don't like that doesn't become a almost a like a crop of talent for directors to kind of try to utilize.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that there would be a lot of talent that you would say, "Hey, I want to try you for this role."
I, I think it's just because like they do, and it's just that they do, but they don't get famous for their theater stuff. They get famous for their movie stuff, and like there are certain people on Broadway who get famous for Broadway, and they get famous for their theater work and not their movie work.
I gotcha. So if you do make that transition, oftentimes it's forgotten by fans because that's not where they know you from. Is that kind
One of the most, yeah, yeah, like for a good example, um, Willem Dafoe was part of a theater group in the 70s, and then he transitioned into film, and what got him big was Platoon.
Was he a part of like a? Did they kind of do skits as well? Because I've seen like early footage of him with long hair, and it was pretty.
Yeah,
It was trippy to see him
I
like that.
think he did. I think the group was called the Wooster Group.
Okay.
I think that's what it was called. And he was part of that group. And that's what basically channeled his passion into. It was a theater company that formed in the mid '70s, and then he did The Loveless with Catherine Bigelow, and then he went on to do Platoon. But he's not known for theater work, although he only really did a lot of theater work in the early stages of his career, the very early stages.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see Beau is Afraid.
Mm-hmm. Let
me ask you this: what is your best movie of 2023 so far?
This is going to be shocking, but it's John Wick Chapter 4.
People love that. People love that. Have you seen all of the franchise?
I have. I binge watched all 3 for this specific movie.
I think I'm gonna have to do the exact same. Is the whole series pretty consistently good?
Yeah.
All right. That's all I needed to hear. I don't know when I'll get to it, but just because of how good. And look, I have seen John Wick 1, and like the choreography of everything is pretty spectacular.
Yes.
Is that in essence what makes this 4th one so good, or does it start to bleed outside of that? I guess
well, everything that John Wick had done in the past, John Wick Chapter 4 pretty much elevates to its highest degree.
Okay.
The story is at its peak climax, and the stakes are high. The stakes have never been higher. The story and the themes are at its breaking point in this one. It's clearly geared up to be the final John Wick movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great. It's a really well-directed movie with a bunch of fantastic action sequences.
That's a pretty good sales pitch, I'll say. And then what are you most excited for that's coming this year? We have a Leonardo DiCaprio. Was it Killer of the Flower Moon, I think it's called?
Yep, Martin Scorsese's new movie.
Oh, yeah.
Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer.
It's probably going to be my most anticipated. That or Oppenheimer.
Yes. And there's a third one that is I can't freaking think of it right now. There's another one. Well, there's
Margot
Barbie.
Robbie. Barbie.
Heck yeah.
Super excited for Barbie. No, I'm actually genuinely excited for Barbie.
Who's directing that? Do you happen to know?
Greta Gerwig, who did Lady
Oh,
Bird.
okay. She is very
I,
well respected, so that actually
yeah.
might be pretty damn good.
I watched Lady Bird again recently,
I have to
and
see that.
I had a 180 switch on my opinion. I loved it. I loved it the second time. Beautifully made.
Napoleon looks pretty good too. I'm excited about that.
Yes.
Dune 2. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about Dune 1?
Dune 1 was good. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I wasn't nearly as high as everyone else, I think. I think I gave that a 3.5. And hopefully Dune 2 makes me like just freak out over how good it is.
It's not freak out worthy, but I really enjoyed Dune. It's definitely better than the David Lynch one, even though I would put almost every other David Lynch film above it.
I know what you mean. Yeah, so
But we're talking about
it's
comparing.
only better than David Lynch's worst.
Yeah,
But
it's only better than David Lynch's worst. Maybe it's better than Inland Empire.
Yeah, that one's a hard nut to crack. That film.
Yeah, David Lynch is.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Yeah.
And some people are saying Ferrari is going to be good, but that's Michael Mann, so I could see that being good as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's going to come out in 2023, though. Yeah, but Killers of the Flower Moon, man, I think that's... Do you know that's supposed to be 206 minutes?
Yes, I knew it was supposed to be nearly 4 hours, and I am all in for it.
Yeah. I still... there's a lot of Scorsese films that I need to watch. Irishman is chief among them.
Somehow I've managed to watch them all.
Damn, how many are there?
There's 25.
Wow. Kudos to you, man.
Yeah.
I like Scorsese a lot. What's your favorite, I guess I'll ask? Scorsese.
You want to... it's one... if you want to take a guess, I think it's a pretty obvious pick. We talked about it before, and you said you had watched it and you liked it a lot.
Ooh. Well, my favorite film is between Dark Knight and Goodfellas. Is yours
Yes.
Goodfellas?
No.
The Departed?
No.
I don't think it's Wolf of Wall Street, but I've seen that one.
No.
No.
It's one of his earlier movies.
Oh, Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just thinking the complete wrong time period. That's what threw me off. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I could see that. That's a deeply dark movie.
Yes. And it's one that I do love very much.
I don't know if he ever gets as dark as that movie is.
What
are your thoughts?
No, I can't. Shutter Island gets close.
I would agree with that.
Bringing Out the Dead is pretty dark.
Yeah.
Really, any Scorsese movie that was written by Paul Schrader is the darkest that Scorsese has ever gotten. Yeah, Taxi Driver, dark. Raging Bull, very dark on a human level. Last Temptation of Christ, very dark. And Bringing Out the Dead, very dark.
And let me ask you this. Where does Gangs in New York kind of rank loosely?
Somewhere in the middle.
I gotcha.
Definitely somewhere in the middle.
I will say, and like, obviously, I think Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, I have above it. I haven't seen as many as you, so I think it might actually be close to the middle in mine too. But I adore Daniel Day-Lewis's performance in that film. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's great.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
And Liam Neeson, for his short stint, I genuinely liked him.
Hmm.
I'm excited to see. This year might be one of the best crop of movies for the Oscars. So I'm excited. I'm
Yeah.
already excited. Nearly a year in the future, I know, but I think our Oscar video is going to be very, very interesting here.
Yes.
Well, Ethan, just to recap, do you want to run through your Evil Dead rankings one more time, just to so people know them in order, I guess?
We we went off topic there. Um, but so my number 5 is Evil Dead 2013. 4 is the original Evil Dead. 3 is Evil Dead Rise. Number 2 is Army of Darkness, and number 1 is Evil Dead 2.
So I am 5 Evil Dead Rises, 4 Evil Dead 2013, 3 Army of Darkness, 2 Evil Dead 1981, and then number 1 Evil Dead 2 1987. This was really fun. I'm glad we got to talk about this. Evil Dead Rise has been really popular on Letterboxd, so I was glad I had.
Only completely derailed at the end, but that was also very fun.
No, that was super, super fun too. I was glad we got to talk about horror movies and then these upcoming movies, but it's always a blast to talk movies with you, man.
Of course, of course.
For those of you still listening, Film Junkie in the title and in the pinned comment down below. Ethan makes really good videos that you're going to want to check out, and I think you may have alluded to a video that you have in the works. I could be wrong. I could be right.
We shall see.
You guys are going to want to check them out, though, and you're going to want to subscribe to his channel. Thanks again, Ethan, and thank you all for watching. You've been great, and we will catch you on the Flippity Floop. Bye, y'all.
Catch you on the Flippity Flip. Catch you guys on the Flippity Flip. Flippity Flip. Flippity Flip. Really? Okay. See you guys.